With each season of highs, we must unfortunately confront its lows. I'm ABagOVicodin, and here are my bottom 5 episodes for Season 5 of MLP. Without further ado, let's get started. Number 5. Castle Sweet Castle. I feel like a dick, but here we go. Castle Sweet Castle is an episode that really needed a good song to drive home the emotions that came with replacing something that was this dear to both Twilight's and, in a way, our hearts. The Golden Oaks library was destroyed in the Season 4 finale, and we had an entire hiatus, as well as that misguided and originally joking Save the Tree effort, to build us up for this episode. And while the episode was okay in being able to pull the other 5 together and convey that home is not exactly your material possessions, I've never seen a worse song in this show. I know I said before that all songs are subjective, and I don't blame anyone for liking Make This Castle a Home, but all I see within it are songs that serve their purpose better. The mandolin was better in the Crystal Empire song, whereas in this song it just happens under the same melody. The lyrics are boring and completely awkward in the first minute of the song, and while the reprise is better, it's easy to make a 30-second song work than a 2-minute song, obviously. Pick a song at random and those lyrics were better than this one. For an episode that was built up throughout the entire hiatus, that song definitely kneecapped this episode. And while the episode was good, it was the best of the worst. Number 4. Made in Manhattan. I'm not mad at this episode, I'm just disappointed. The writer of this episode wrote Maud Pie, which is one of my favorite episodes of Season 5, but the lightning didn't seem to strike twice this time around. The problem with Made in Manhattan is that it's boring. I'm not really annoyed that the episode was completely reliant on a flyer landing in Applejack's face for it to happen, since their butt marks were going to point them to the spot eventually. It's kind of evident with how boring this episode is, considering that's the only thing that really bothers me. This episode isn't terrible, there's no out-of-place character moments, and I probably laughed a few times, but the problem is that I can't remember it at all. This one barely beat out Party Poop for the spot, which is impressive considering I am a Pinkie Pie fan, and would obviously be more insulted if her episode was bad. But at least I remembered Party Pooped. This episode would have probably needed a massive rewrite in order to be either entertaining or substantial, and this episode is neither. Number 3. Princess Spike. Well, of course this has to be up there, right? Princess Spike is yet another unfortunate Spike episode that's going to be thrown up on the pile alongside Spike at Your Service for simply being misguided and a bad idea. I'm always hesitant to follow along with episodes when they rely on bad luck to drive a narrative, since it usually takes away the blame from the character that's facing the problem by making the problem the bad day or bad luck. I understand half of this episode because of course children are going to want to help out their parents or friends without realizing the intricacies that come with solving a problem that is either above them or requires more thought. But this episode puts us at an impasse. Is Spike smarter than this? If so, then this episode is flawed and insults his character. But if not, and if Spike's age is relevant to how he handles these situations, then Spike fans are wrong, and I can already see the pitchforks over the horizon by merely suggesting that. There's also the fact that this writer wrote What About Discord as well, so it's probably the first reason. Nevertheless, number 2, Appaloosa's Most Wanted. This episode was so close, too. Appaloosa's Most Wanted is a weird episode to look back on after everything else has aired, considering Troubleshoes basically has Diamond Tiara's problem in Crusaders of the Lost Mark, but without all of the depth and previous characters of backstory in order to make us care. I mean, I think about the episode now and I just get confused because it feels like there are pieces of this episode that are missing. Oh, also this episode is basically a rewrite of a Sonic Boom episode that focused on Knuckles having bad luck and wanting to readjust the luck balance of the universe, so there's that. I can get behind the idea that Troubleshoes' cutie mark could be a sign of bad luck, since in retrospect we've had 2 characters that were sort of on the same path, Starlight Glimmer and Diamond Tiara. All 3 of these characters were mistaken about their marks and paid the price because of it. But this episode just kind of happens, and there are a few inconsistencies within it that bug me. Why does Brayburn have to look after these kids after Applejack and Applebloom had a family moment where AJ had to admit that she needed to give her sister more room? Why is the bad luck focused on more than the Troubleshoes' apparent lack of self-worth that makes him more of a klutz than he actually is? There's more to nag than enjoy in this episode, which is frankly unfortunate. And finally, number 1, What About Discord? Guys, I just don't get it. What About Discord was one of the most viewed episodes this season, and I've seen almost no criticisms of this episode besides the apparent death threats, which obviously are stupid. Since I'm not as livid anymore about this episode, the only thing I can really do is question why it's liked. This episode was a complete waste of time, and anything good that accidentally came of it quickly grew old. Sure, Spike was written well for the first 5 minutes, but Spike works well when he is the contrasting childlike honesty among a group of usually headstrong or sometimes crazy mares. But when all of the characters are acting this way, and acting out of character, the next 17 minutes feel like pulling teeth. I'm more insulted by what this episode seems to convey than what actually happens on the screen. All of the lines feel like they were either written at a poor attempt to be funny or were placeholders that the writer forgot to change. Discord is simply not enjoyable in this episode. Nothing he says sticks, and he is supposed to be the one that makes you laugh with an amalgamation of pop culture references and world changing, but he does neither. The main 6 aren't that much better. Not only do the other 5 tease Twilight, but Twilight abandons all benefit of the doubt to suggest Discord after she was essentially lectured by Fluttershy and Keep Calm and Flutter On to not do that. Along with that, Keep Calm and Flutter On gave the character depth to Discord that this episode simply steps all over just to fill 22 minutes. Nothing annoys me more than when it feels like an episode was turned in at the last minute. DHX did the best that they could to make this episode enjoyable, but the writing that keeps us coming back to this show in all of the episodes that I mentioned last week were absent in this one. This episode had absolutely no redeeming qualities apart from the first 2 minutes. Once Twilight steps out of her castle, it's nothing but downhill from there, which is impressive since Spike at Your Service at least took until halfway through the first act to fall apart. In summation, this episode was a complete waste of John Delancey's limited time on this show, and an insulting excuse for a script. I guess the bright side is that it can't get much worse than this. And so, those are my thoughts on the bottom 5 episodes of this season. Am I perhaps misguided on one of the episodes or missed one that deserved to be up there? Let me know in the comments. Make sure to like, check out some of my other videos, and subscribe to catch more pony videos over the hiatus. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. ABagOVicodin out.